and I am honored to have with me as my first guest in this podcast, Rich Viano. And Rich and I go back probably more years than we care both to say, which is a lot of years. And we have a history. Well, we met through the marching pageantry arts at the ages of like 18, 19, and what were you, like 14, 15, something like that, young.
Yeah, 15.
And by pure chance of passing a drill spot on a field between a baritone and a bass drum.
A major checkpoint, I might add.
In the Sunset Sound drum bugle course. So Rich is a incredible human being. Let's start there. A great leader, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk with us tonight. He runs multiple businesses. He's a great teacher, an incredible percussion teacher. And we, like I say, go back. Rich, is it almost 40 years? Wait a minute. No, yeah. It's like 30 years. It's like 30 years. So anyway, I try to give a little bit of an intro of who you are, but talk about yourself a little bit.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be here, and I'm happy to support you in any of these ventures that you find yourself in. I mean, I consider you, on my short list of friends, that you can count on for the rest of your life. You've always been there, and I am so happy we're shared a dot, in 1985. I'm a father of two. I'm a, I guess by trade, I'm a creative director for a company called Capital Communications and Consulting, and I do a lot of graphic design work, video editing, production of brand presentation for government defense companies. But I've also had this incredible run as a musician. With some really lucky high school marching bands that I was a part of, which led me into drum and bugle corps at a very young age. And I spent most of my youth and most of my young adult life, being a part of drum and bugle corps, which I think we all share the same feeling that it shapes your sharpness and your ability to collaborate and your ability to get along with a lot of people and adjust and work as a group. So I've leaned on those experiences my whole life. And that brought me to Walt Disney World, and I had a wonderful 20-year career as a professional player, and maybe the most famous drum and bugle corps in the world, the Future Corps, for 7 of those years. And then I was able to adjust and become my own band leader in Ammo Kingdom for 13 years after that, in a band called the Village Beatniks. I've literally traveled the world. I've played in front of the largest audiences. I've played a lot of great gigs and a lot of everything from orchestra jobs, to being the music director of a Super Bowl. And that's where I am now. I've reinvented myself at 40 years old, when life had a major shift. Right. For me, and entertainment was, the economy was down and people were getting laid off, and my band was one of the ones that got let go. So I had 2 young kids to raise, and that's really the fulcrum, if you will, of where I am now.
Yeah, I hear you. It's a great career and a great life and a great family you have. I respect everything you've done in it. And I mentioned on my intro episode, which you clearly haven't heard yet because I don't think anybody has. But by the time hopefully people hear this, they will have. And after I was a high school band director, I started to do programming for schools, programming like field shows and different things like that. And that kind of brought you and I together because we were doing some stuff at Cypress Creek High School in Orlando with Steve Davis's groups. And so that's kind of the first, I would say, project we worked on together, besides performing together and whatnot. So we did that for a number of years with a great level of success and a lot of fun. Affected a lot of kids' lives there. And then we had like a sabbatical time, not our friendship, but just professional working. And then when I was at the Boston Crusaders as director, going into that would have been the 3rd year I was there, I think, is when I was doing some development with the percussion program. And I remember I knew in my brain that I wanted to involve you in that organization for a number of reasons. It was not only your musical talent, which is above, but it was the way you reach people and the way you reach kids and help them realize who they could be and what they could be. Not to mention, I knew it was going to bring our percussion to a whole nother level. So I remember vividly picking up the phone to you going into that 2001 season, which was quite a season for us to learn in, and you coming in and taking that program over and then starting down that track. What strikes what remember what do you remember about that more than anything? Like what really hits you hard from that starting point?
Oh man. Well, I remember that phone call like it was yesterday. And I remember hanging up and being like super excited and scared to death, at the same time, and immediately having imposter syndrome, like right away, like, oh my God, am I really up for this? Um, Thinking of everything that could possibly go wrong. And then going back and forth between, oh my God, this is the greatest opportunity ever. And Boston was on the come up and just made finals. They were literally the biggest thing since sliced bread. 2000 was such a huge year for them. Yeah, I just thought it was the greatest opportunity I had ever been given. Honestly, man, I was really excited.
And what was really interesting for all of us teaching during that point in time was, like you said, we had come off a really strong season. We inherited a lot of talent because of that, and we're blessed to be able to move forward with the organization in that way. And I think we were all learning at that point how to program and how to find difficulty levels and what to do and what not to do and how all that worked. And that's probably a whole nother episode in itself.
There was a lot of what not to do learned, that entire season. I remember getting, to the camps and having that first uh-oh moment, where everything wasn't exactly the way I remembered it. Integrating with people that have been doing this nonstop because I had a gap.
Right.
I was playing professionally, so I wasn't teaching drum corps. So for a good 7-year stretch, I think, I haven't really been in front of that level of kids,
right.
In a long time, but I had a very successful high school band program going on in Orlando. So at least my teaching chops were in shape,
Sure.
But the level was just beyond what I thought it was. And so, yeah, the learning curve was really, really steep.
And from a leadership standpoint, in that idiom, you're working with leading through a design team. You're leading, instructors, a full staff because you're setting up a caption. And whether this is in band or drum corps or winter guard or Broadway or the arts or anything, when you're leading a staff like that, you have a lot of different facets that you have to work with as far as different personalities and people. And then, of course, there's the students, right? Because when a student is dedicating their soul, let's face it, what it is to what this activity is and still is today, you're doing it at such an intensity that, and this is something I've learned through the years too, everything is like, every little thing is really huge in that world, because that world, even though a lot of people have no idea what it is, we're living in it at a very intense level. And so, like, what are some of the lessons you learned, at least in that early part of the time where we were working together in that organization, when it comes to that stuff as far as implementing leadership and enabling it?
Wow, that's a great question, man. That's a great question because there are so many places to start. So I'll just pick a rabbit, pick a hole. I think there was a great lesson in collaboration, like right out of the gate, because you realize you're around a team of people that I already knew for the most part. A lot of people I were familiar with, but not in this way. I had either always been a student in this scenario or like I said, like in a high school situation. I wasn't
Right.
really at this upper level. And so managing the pressure of being in the room and also just, like learning how to find my voice, with that team of people that were already established. I'm coming in as a new person also, and I'm trying to figure out where I am in this, finding my feet, finding my confidence, finding a voice, but at the same time, making sure I'm staying open to all of the great advice I was getting, because a lot of people were directing me, specifically. Kevin and Marty at that time. It was Marty, and we had, and Jared was a voice in my head at that time, and Jason Baker was a voice in my head at that time, and you, of course, and just trying to manage it all, and realizing that I needed to get organized really quickly. I really was being held accountable for a lot of pieces of data I wasn't used to doing, and then that kind of rolls downhill. Now I've got to get in front of a bunch of kids I don't know, and I've got to meet them really quickly. I'm meeting some staff people really quickly, and we've got to get comfortable with one another like right away. And I don't know that I learned this there, but I certainly applied this there, which is I just lean on authenticity. I try to be the truest person I can be in each of those scenarios, and I find it's easier for me to navigate by being my real self as fast as I can, not trying to be too pretentious, not trying to be too safe, just really trying to be myself. And I think that's why the relationships became genuine, and that's what kind of accelerated our success, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And I'm, again, people listening to this only know bits and fragments of context, but I believe in that particular scenario, we learned a lot between year 1 and year 2 with you with us, because I learned a lot between year 3 and year 4, and it made the next season monumentally stronger in a lot of ways. And it's interesting because the organization was extremely successful on and off the field, but I really feel like our attitudes and our behavior and our demeanor and our mindset played a lot into that. And I still, at least with me, I apply what I learned a lot between those 2 years of that competitive activity to even things that I do today in dealing with people and dealing with employees and dealing with even students I teach now at Tarpon Springs and different groups that I work with in this day and age.
It is talked about a lot in my house. 2002 is the year we're talking about. And it is definitely a major mile marker in my life. And I learned a lot of lessons in that off season between 2001 and 2002. It really kind of started in July on tour in 2001, when quite honestly, the lesson was learned too late, and what it is was just being focused on the wrong goal. That was really it was competitive activity. And so I let my competitive spirit really kind of drive my direction. And that's the lesson learned, which was, it was a long game, and there's lots of small steps to make, and just being more, patient and patterned, on how I was going to get from one piece to the next, and staying simple, leaning on basic musician qualities, playing well, approaching the instrument properly, and being a good musician first and foremost, and not worrying about, demand and competing and winning drums, and being just
Right.
massively overly emotionally engaged in something that is going to mean nothing 10 minutes after you win it, in a way. And I mean, no disrespect to anyone who's won it.
Of course.
I'm speaking on personal experience after being crowned a world champion snare drummer. It's very lonely the day after,
Right.
and I knew that as a kid, but I forgot to apply it as an adult. And I think that's something that 2002 taught me for sure. It was more about the process and the journey and making a good recording. We kind of just changed the way we were looking at things.
Right. Yeah.
Have something to be proud of at the end rather than beat somebody.
Yeah.
And in the end, we ended up beating a lot of people, right? I mean, just ends up being this secondary byproduct of what I would say is doing it the right way.
Right.
Now I'm less competitive in my professional business. I'm really not competitive at all. I'm really just looking for that end goal and using one project, one experience after another to just get better, just as we did that particular season. Just build one thread at a time, weave a big, strong cable of good habits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, remember, we're at this age now versus what we were at that age then, and years and perspective and figuring out what blind spots are that we have and all that kind of stuff makes a world of difference. It's interesting. I'm working with the Boston Crusaders again after like 15, 16 years, because Chris Holland and Gina Cipriani brought me in there to do this with them.
It's so great.
You know what I mean? And I'm blessed. It's my sweet spot, and it's going home for me in a lot of ways. And with all that being said, from a perspective standpoint, like, I know what is it? Hindsight's 2020, whatever they say, right? So
Yeah.
like all we had at that point in time was the perspective that we did, and
Yeah.
all we had were the resources that we had. And through all the years of doing the drum corps and band, any of the pageantry arts activities, winter, all that kind of stuff, I think one of the things I would want to ask you about is, if people are listening now that are, whether they're a tech or they're a caption head or they're running running an organization or whatever, if you had to tell them some things now that you wish you had known at that point in time when we were figuring out how to do what that thing was, and the thing we're talking about tonight happens to be drum corps, but any of those things, what do you, as cliche of a question as that is, I think anybody listening would be like, yeah, let me hear what you've learned from that time so I can apply it to what I'm doing now. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I mean, for me, this is, these are what I would do different for sure is I would encourage, or how I would encourage somebody, based on my own experiences. One, embrace collaboration. I'm not sure that I was always willing to do that. I kind of felt threatened by other people's ideas. I think as a young person, and again, kind of seeing it as a contest rather than an experience, I tended to let some competitive juices, they probably diminished some of the experiences I had. I had great experiences, but maybe they could have even been better, or maybe my relationships would have been a little richer, with some people. So I kind of let some bad priorities get in the way. That would be one thing. Two, like make sure that the kids are having a good time. Like it seems like the most obvious thing, but again, they're following you, right? And it's so easy for us to get, locked in, and they think that's cool, right? Because they just want to follow you into a fire, but you still have a responsibility to them, as people, as human beings. They're someone's kids. I do think that's one of the challenges of drum corps in a lot of ways, especially at the technician level. It's like when you're 25 and your student is 18,
Yeah.
that gap seems enormous.
Right.
But when you're 53 and you're looking at a 25 and an 18-year-old, those are the same people to me.
They've had about the same amount of life experience.
Right. Like everybody calm down a second, like nothing's that serious. But you could have never told me that. At 25, I would have told you, what I would have said.
Yeah.
And probably that's why I don't teach anymore. Like, I couldn't turn that off, but have fun, and enjoy the differences in other people's art. Like I honestly think that's another piece that's, as I watch all the traffic and the communication online right now, because the activities evolved so much,
Right.
Like how could anybody be right or wrong? You know what I mean? In some ways, besides, obvious moral, deficiencies. I'm just saying in terms of creative choices, whether it's a costume or a traditional uniform or, or prop design or movement or no movement or microphones, and everybody's just, competing with their negativity. And to me, I just see the whole thing is like, this is amazing. You will never get another experience in your life where 140, 160 people will actually come together for a common goal, and really get up every day and work for it. I don't know. I hope everybody realizes how lucky they are to be a part of that. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah, it is rare. It is rare, and it goes by like that. Moves quickly, and the I know we sound like old men, but the kids of today, right? they have so many more opportunities, and they have so many more choices too. They could be
They
doing
do.
a lot of different things, and they choose to do, whether it is drum corps or it is winter drumline or it is winter guard or whatever all that is. Um, I guess my next question for you would be, when it comes to student leadership and empowering and enabling student leaders and having them grow to the highest level when they're involved in some of the projects that we've done and the ones they are working on now. Um, what is your thought process on that to really maximize their experience so they get the most out of it, so they can take it and use it as a teacher themselves, maybe, or a parent, or an employer, or whatever that might look like.
I think band, drum corps, drumline. I mean, and I'm sure this is the same for organized sports as well. I mean, I was heavily involved in baseball as well, as you know.
Yep.
Um, I think the most important thing with the students, and as I say, most important, of course, I'm already self-editing, but one of the most important things is, look, everybody has to recognize that we all benefit from each other's success, right? So leadership really has to have a ecosystem to grow in, right? And that starts with everyone celebrating being a teammate, of some kind, because the label of leader is one thing, but being a leader, right, is an opportunity every single kid in the line can have. And I think that's something that we might not have always pitched it that way, like in words,
Right.
but I do believe that we encourage that. I've always tried to get kids to play with kids. I think the best players who are the kids who think they're the best players. Man, if you're designating yourself as one of the best players or the leader, then you should be taking all of your spare time and helping some other guy get better. Like, it's not grouping up with the best kids and going off to your own and then you guys play at your speed. We've all got to grow. So I think we've always done a good job, or the programs I've been a part of, that's something that we try to do. Older kids help the younger kids for sure. Find a buddy, pair people up, have somebody you can lean on, and then that process just repeats. It's rinse and repeat. And as each person gets older, now you have 3 layers of leadership in their process. They're blooming as they're turning into seniors or age outs, and new kids are coming in, and they don't have a bunch of people telling them what to do. They have a bunch of people helping them, right? And being like that servant leadership, right? I mean, it's been labeled commercially as servant leadership, but I think we've always done that in the drumline. It's always about, catering to the needs or the struggles of other people on the team, you know.
Well, it's when you say, when I think of servant leadership, though, I think of selflessness. When I'm teaching leadership, but it's interesting. I work with a band program that's a leadership conservatory. So
Yeah,
we teach the students all as if every single one of them are leaders, from the incoming freshmen to
exactly.
the graduating seniors and officers are all leaders. And you said it best, like, if you treat every student like they are a leader, they're all going to get the best maximized experience. But from the same standpoint, and it's funny. Like I said, I'm working with Boston leaders right now, and I've told the kids, I said, like, your generation has this reputation of entitlement, right? Not
Yeah.
these particular kids; they're massively and wonderful, but just the generation as a whole. And I think that because of that, going into scenarios and situations with that stigma, if you will, they kind of have to even be more on their toes to make sure that they're being selfless, humble, kind, and really really keeping their judgment down and their curiosity up when it comes to that.
And they have so many more challenges. I mean, they're just intrinsically connected, 20 with the digital device 24 hours a day. You can't even breathe or wink or nod without all of your friends knowing what you're doing. I know where you ate. I know who you're hanging out with. I know who got invited, who didn't get invited. I understand the difference between a passive icon, emoji, and a passive aggressive emoji. I mean, these kids are under a tremendous amount of pressure, man.
Yeah, they are.
you
Yeah.
know so they've got to stay relaxed, man. They've got to be true. I would imagine it's a lot harder to be a student leader these days, because there's no shortage of immaturity out there also, right? So I mean, and those have to be some very challenging moments for young student leaders when maybe when they're encountering that kind of a response, where people don't directly deal with each other, right? They go to their little device and they say what they want to say. And now
Right.
you have to put real people in a room and handle each other, and handle personalities and handle varying degrees of ability, right?
Right. Right. No, 100%. So, well, when you think about your legacy in leadership, student leadership, arts patriocy, all those types of things, what do you want that to be? What is your legacy as kids walk around that had you as teachers years ago and implement what you've taught them? What is your legacy in our activity?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't feel like I have a legacy. I am humbled to think that I may have influenced a couple generations of young men and women. And I'm always flattered when students will come back and remind me of maybe something that I said to them that might have helped them over a hump. I think plan your work and work your plan is pretty much my signature vibe that I have passed on to literally hundreds and hundreds of young musicians. And it's not about organization as much of it is just really knowing where you want to go. Like if you know where you want to go, then really success is just a series of steps. And as long as you're being honest with where you actually are starting, and you take the actual next step, you can get literally anywhere you want to go. It just takes time, and maybe a couple extra reps. But I would say that, I've been very encouraging to people. Anything's possible. I really believe that anything I put my mind to, I can do. And I don't think that's magic dust. And I don't think that's, ego. I think that everybody can do that, and I love to throw, coal into the engine, man, of a young kid who's trying to find that self-efficacy, that confidence to say, yeah, I see a path for me and all I got to do is the steps. I mean, I hope that's what I've done. I would be a very happy person at the end when the lights go out if that's it.
Yep. No, I hear you loud and clear on that. And I've been honored to work with you in enough situations to know that I believe that's the case. And like I said, I think we've all learned. I think we've all grown. I think there's a lot to the cliche of failing forward. I know that I have had to multiple times, and learn how to progress forward in the activity. So, well, listen, this has been great. It's been awesome talking to you about this. If someone wanted to find you, maybe to chat with you a little bit one-on-one about percussion or leadership or
Sure.
growth, how could someone find you?
Yeah, listen, you can find me on at my website, vianolytics.com, VIANOLYTICS, like analytics, vianolytics.com. You can use the contact form there, or you can seek me out on Facebook or Insta. I'm there as myself. I'm my authentic self, Rich Viano, no secrets, no games. What you
Awesome.
see is what you get.
I know it. I know it. I know it. Awesome. All right, Rich. Well, I appreciate you spending the time with us this evening, and I hope everybody hearing this is getting a lot out of this. This is Leadership Ladder. We hope you're getting a lot out of this, and until next time, thanks, Rich.
My pleasure.